Right. So first and foremost, this section is split up into the sections creativity and then problem solving. Right, so we're going to look at creativity first, or creative thinking. Right, and one of the questions that you will come across at some stage is to define creative thinking. All right, so you can see there are two separate definitions that will be acceptable. First and foremost, creative thinking is when people are able to think of new and original approaches and ideas to find solutions to challenges. So generally you will get asked this question where it will be allocated 2 marks. So keep that in mind when looking at the definition that you wish to provide. The second acceptable answer would be creative thinking is being resourceful by applying artistic and clever ideas to create something original or new. All right, so that is creative thinking and the definition that will be acceptable going forward. Okay, the next part that you will see in your module is the difference between routine thinking and creative thinking. So the question that you could expect when looking at this section would be distinguish between routine thinking and creative thinking. So this will be allocated normally about 4 marks. Okay, so you get 2 marks for the definition of one and then 2 marks for the definition of the other. So let's have a look at routine thinking first. Okay, routine thinking is looking at the left-hand side of the brain. Right, this is where you focus on logical thought and methodical ways of doing things. All right, so this would be more your mathematicians, your statisticians as well. So that's what you would be expecting during routine thinking. One other aspect is routine thinking is where consistent normal thinking is applied to a specific situation. All right, so that is routine thinking. Let's have a look at creative thinking. As you can see by the image that we've got on the right hand side, this is where you would be far more creative and looking at imagination, art, music, and that sort of thing. So let's have a look. This would be the right hand side of the brain, looking at new ideas and creative ideas that are generated. The focus is on being creative, using one's imagination, insight, art, and music awareness to find solutions to unique challenges. So you might identify that both are relevant in a business environment. Okay, so often in this perspective, we look at creative thinking, bringing up your unique ideas and innovative ideas that can give your business a competitive advantage. All right, so as I said, this is usually asked in the form of distinguish or discuss a difference between routine thinking and creative thinking. All right, moving on to the next slide, we will look at the difference between conventional solutions versus non-conventional solutions. Right, so quite similar concepts to what we spoke about between routine thinking and creative thinking. Your conventional solutions may be aligned to your routine thinking. These are solutions that are believed and followed by everyone. Okay, is what is expected. These solutions are what most people expect and they appear to be normal. All right, this is very common and it is what is acceptable in general business activities. The other one would be non-conventional solutions. So this would be considered opposite to your conventional type thinking, right? So non-conventional solutions are solutions that are not created as part of the norm and which do not follow what is generally done in or believed in a workplace. Okay, so this would be more your creative side of things, something unique, innovative, and very useful in a business environment because it can give you that competitive edge. These solutions are also obviously creative and unique and are usually a result of creative thinking. Okay, so if you're implementing creative thinking techniques within your business, the chances of becoming or coming up with non-conventional solutions, solutions that are not consistent or routine, are most certainly possible. Okay, so that would be conventional solutions versus non-conventional solutions, also asked in the form distinguish between the two types of solutions. All right. In creative thinking, one of the more popular type questions would be ways in which businesses can create an environment that stimulates creative thinking in the workplace. So this will be asked in the form of discuss, explain, or describe ways in which a business can create an environment. All right, so let's have a look at a couple of the examples that are provided. Businesses must emphasize the importance of creative thinking to ensure that all staff know that their ideas will be heard. If staff are aware that they will be listened to and their ideas and their contributions will be considered, they're more likely to provide those ideas. So it's important as management or as business owners that they're encouraging employees to come up with new ideas. That brings us to the second point, which looks at inspiring staff to produce new ideas. Management can put incentives in place which encourage employees to come up with their own ideas. Right, there's numerous examples, incentives like monetary incentives or bonuses if staff come up with different ideas. All right. The next one would be plan regular workshops so that brainstorming sessions can be held to generate new ideas. So many businesses will allocate a certain period of time, maybe during the month or during the day or during the week, whereby they're allocating that to brainstorming sessions. In these sessions, you are encouraged to come up with as many ideas to solve problems within the business. And again, looking at the business owners, it is to their benefit to encourage staff to come up with some creative ideas. All right. Ensure that the communication channels remain open by placing suggestion boxes around the workplace. That is just one example where businesses can encourage ideas to be provided. Having suggestion boxes across the workplace, one of the benefits of suggestion boxes is that it's anonymous, but it's not the only way that you can do that. You can have employees email or send messages to management if there are any recommendations or bright ideas for the business. You can look at some of the most successful businesses in the current circumstance. You can look at some of the big IT companies like Meta or Facebook. You can look at Google. They all allocate certain time in the business and they thrive on new ideas and new creative, innovative solutions to problems. And that's why they're at the forefront of their respective industries. Right, the last one there. Train staff members to think creatively, to solve problems, use mind mapping and lateral thinking. Okay, so lateral thinking, different ways of thinking when presented with problems. We'll have a look at problem solving a little bit later, and also some of the techniques that are used that can be or the staff can be educated in certain techniques which allow for problem solving to take place. All right, so those are ways in which businesses can create environments which stimulate creative thinking in the workplace. All right, so very popular question, and you can expect that towards the end of the year, no doubt. All right, moving on to the next slide. Now we look at the advantages for businesses and which implement creative thinking in the workplace. So you can probably come up with a couple. These are 8 examples which you can provide as answers to the question. Here you can expect a question like discuss the impact. Now remember, discussing the impact looks at advantages and disadvantages. In this instance, we look at the advantages. So it would be discuss the impact of creative thinking in the workplace. So let's look at some of the examples. Creative thinking will lead to improved participation of staff members, which will ensure the generation of new ideas. So if you're looking at creative thinking in the workplace, this will allow people to provide their contributions and their ideas, and they're encouraged to do so. And this often provides a rather fun and enjoyable environment to work in. All right, the business will have competitive advantage over other businesses because of the unique strategies that can be introduced. So thinking of those predominant industry or businesses within those industries like Google, like Meta, they are at the forefront because they have gained those competitive advantages. Small things, small ideas that they've come up with which allow them to have that innovative edge over their competitors. Right, businesses will be able to solve complex problems. Again, if you're encouraging creative thinking and you are encouraging staff from different diverse backgrounds to provide some ideas, this allows the business to actually solve those complex problems which they are presented with. Now think of COVID, which we experienced a few years ago. There were complex problems that businesses needed to solve during that period, and it involved different decisions, different ideas that presented to the business managers and owners in order to actually make their way through those difficult times. All right. As management and employees introduce and create many ideas, saving time and money for business, productivity will increase. So they look at ways in which to be more efficient and more cost effective. If you are able to find ways and someone is presenting ideas which allows you to save money and save time and possibly increase productivity at the same time, that will be incredibly beneficial to your business. And also you would be able to move forward and create that competitive advantage that we've been referring to. All right, managers and employees will demonstrate more confidence as they perform their duties. Okay, as anyone or any employee will attest to, if their ideas and their contributions are heard by management, that involves creates a great deal more confidence in the workplace, and if an employee is confident, they're going to be performing their tasks at a far better quality and they'll be far more productive. All right, so it's important that managers and employees demonstrate confidence in the workplace. Managers will be inspired to lead their teams more efficiently. Okay, if they are getting ideas and contributions from their employees, this will therefore allow managers to manage their staff and lead their staff in a far more effective manner, and this will ensure that they are more efficient and productive as a team. Second last one there, managers and employees will apply their knowledge in collaborative manner when performing their duties. Now, just to explain, collaboration or collaborative means working together. So as you may have gone through the team performance or team relationships section of work, this is also very important where productivity is concerned and efficiency in the workplace. If you're working as a team, you are going to be far more successful in the workplace and far more productive. Right. Last but not least, the morale amongst the staff members will be improved. As mentioned before, if a staff member is considering themselves to be heard and their contributions are considered by management, it does result in the morale of the staff members being improved, and they're far happier in the staff room, and they're far happier actually being at work as opposed to doing the same mundane job day in, day out. All right, so that is the advantage of creative thinking in the workplace, and as a reminder, guys, this can be asked in the form of discuss the impact or discuss or explain the advantages of creative thinking in the workplace. Right, it's at this moment that I'm going to hand over to Mr. Pretorius, who will take us through problem solving and the different techniques.
Good afternoon, grade 11s. So the next section, we will be focusing on problem solving. So a key question that is always asked is, what is the definition of problem solving? So problem solving is a process of studying a situation to find ways to bring about change. And it is also where you consider different alternative solutions, and this should also be generated. These alternative solutions are generated and they are evaluated in response to the problems that a business might face. Then, to add to this definition, problem solving also involves collecting facts that include problem finding as well as problem shaping. So you are basically trying to find out and to identify what the actual problem is, and then to also define it in a lot more depth so that the business is able to tackle these issues and able to solve them. And then it's also important to note that problem solving can be solved by an individual, a group, or a team member. I want to also emphasize that decision making is included in problem solving, because if a problem needs to be solved, it's important to consider the different alternative solutions and then decide on the best solution and then to implement it to bring about the change that the business wants. Now we'll look at the different problem solving techniques. So as a grade 11 learner, you are exposed to a variety of problem solving techniques as of grade 10 up till now. So just to mention a few of them, we have the empty chair technique, we have brainstorming, we have mind mapping. We then also have the focus, which is our focus today, is the Delphi technique and the force field analysis. So the force field analysis in this case is used for decision making purposes, especially when a business wants to implement change. And the change then is a change that the business wants to implement maybe on a small scale as well as on a large scale. So this particular analysis involves identifying what we call the pros and the cons of decisions for change. In other terms, we are looking at the forces for change and the forces against change. And the business will then ask their staff to come together. They might come into a workshop, or they might come into a discussion where they will weigh up the advantages and the disadvantages for bringing about a particular change in the business that could actually be of benefit to the business. So based on the weighing up of the options, the business will then decide whether they will go ahead with the change that they want to implement, or if they will remain as they are at this particular point in time. Now the Delphi technique. When we think of Delphi, the word experts comes to mind. So in Delphi, this particular analysis is used to solve new and complex business problems for which there is no current answers. So that is why a business will then invite a panel of experts to assist in solving these new and complex business problems. So the panel of experts who will meet, in this case, sometimes they will never meet, sometimes they might not even meet face to face. They will then come up with creative solutions to the problems that have been posed or that the business is currently facing, without having to sit through long and drawn out group meetings. So they can do this in their various locations, but it's important to know that these are experts, people with the knowledge, the skills, the expertise and the experience that the business taps into to allow them to solve the complex and new problems that they might be facing.
Sorry, Mr. Pretorius, if I could just add something with regards to the way this is assessed. You'll see a question a little bit later where there's usually a scenario provided, and you will need to identify which of these problem-solving techniques is being referred to in that scenario. And thereafter, you'll need to be answering some questions based on that technique that you've identified. So please, it is very important. One of the keys there, Mr. Pretorius did mention it, as soon as the scenario mentions anything about experts, then it's a Delphi technique. If we are referring to anything with regards to pros and cons or advantages, disadvantages, then straight away you can start thinking about the force field analysis. So just keep that in mind when it comes down to assessment.
Thank you for that, Mr. Edwards. Thanks a lot. Okay, so now we'll focus on another key question for the final exam, and this is also in preparation for next year, because these type of questions will then be extended to next year and will be part of the curriculum for grade 12 as well. So the next focus is on the application of the two problem solving techniques that we have just focused on now. So with regards to the Delphi technique, a business will now invite this panel of experts. They will prepare a questionnaire, and this questionnaire is where we call it round one, where the panel of experts will now have to answer the questionnaire based on their own experiences, skills, and their knowledge of a particular topic. So the questionnaire is then issued to the panel of experts, and then the panel of experts will now have to complete that particular questionnaire. So they'll complete the questionnaire, and then the responses of that questionnaire will then be basically taken in, and then the person that has been responsible for this process will now draw up a feedback report. And that feedback report will be basically analyzed, and basically a summary will be made, and that summary will again be shared with that same panel of experts. And now in the second round, the panel of experts now have a decision to make. Would they stick with the original decisions, or would they change their mindset or change their thinking or their ideologies about what they have basically answered in the first set of questionnaires, because now they have a greater variety of answers or ideas to think of when filling out the second set of questionnaires. So now the person responsible for this process will now then issue the panel of experts with a second questionnaire. And basically, again, the panel of experts will then fill that in. Another process that is basically a reciprocal process is they will again have to give up their responses, and a second set of feedback reports will then be drawn up. Based on that feedback report, it will again be sent to the panel of experts. The panel of experts will now then try to come to an agreement. Another word for the word agreement is a consensus. And based on that, they would either be able to solve the problem that the business has, this new and complex business problem, or the process will then have to start again, so that the business can ultimately solve the issue that they are particularly dealing with. And yes, Delphi is not a quick solution. It is a time-consuming endeavor for a business, but it is a vital endeavor, and it's a vital basically task and activity that can bring about change, and that can bring about the solving of complex business problems for the particular business. Then our second problem solving technique is the force field analysis. So the application process happens as follows. Firstly, the current situation or problem will be identified, and then a desired situation or solution will then be described to the employees at the particular workplace. Then it's important to identify what is going to happen if there is no action taken. So again, we're trying to solve a particular problem or bring about change. So it's important to note what will happen if no action is taken and things remain the same. Then all the driving forces and the restraining forces, forces for change and the forces against change, will be stated. And now the key restraining forces and their strengths should be discussed, and it will be discussed in a lot of depth. It's not a process that is just done to get it done. It's actually a lengthy process. Again, it's time consuming, but it is also very vital for the success and for bringing about change within the business. Then the key driving forces and their strengths will also be discussed. So just to state that again, the restraining forces, the forces against change and their strengths will be discussed, and the forces for change and their strengths will also be discussed. Then to go on with the process, a score will then be allocated to each force using a numerical scale, where a 1 is allocated if the statement is weak, and a 5 if it is a strong reason for why that particular force is, in this case, a good strength, or it is something that the business really should consider. It's a good reason for why we want to bring change, or if there is a good reason for why we would not want to bring change. So the positives and the negatives are then evaluated before deciding if the project or the change that wants to be implemented will be viable. So then it's important to choose the force for or the force against change with the highest score as the solution to the problem. So it will be based on the numerical scale, and also a tally will then be made whether the forces for change are more or the forces against change are more. So it's important to note that the restraining forces should be analyzed to determine the best way of moving forward with them. And then it's important to identify the priorities and develop an action plan. An action plan is a strategy or a process as to how you're going to go about implementing the change you want to bring about. And if the change is not to be implemented, there must be an action plan as to how we can improve the current situation that the business might be facing.
Mr. Pretorius, I think with this section of work, the force field analysis, it's always nice to have a look at an example. One thing that I also want to mention is that when we the reason why there's numerical values given to the forces for change or against change is so that it's quantifiable. So right at the end, you've got a definitive, yes, we will go through to this with this change, or no, it's not worth our while. So you can actually see the scores for one or the other. What I often do in the classroom is that we use examples, and I've used this for personal decisions so that you can see the quantifiable reasoning behind it. So the example that I often use is, you're in grade 11 at the moment, and you might be thinking of where you wish to study. So maybe you're considering going and studying in Johannesburg, right? Maybe at UJ up in Johannesburg. You might say to yourself, why would I go there? Let's look at the decisions as to why. So you'd list all the reasons for, all right? Then you would list all the reasons against that decision. Maybe transport or the fact that you're going to be away from home might be a factor that is against the decision. And then you would allocate maybe the importance, 1 to 5. Okay, maybe it's really important that you're actually at home. So the fact that you're going to be away from home is a reason against that decision. You allocate 5 points to that one. All right, and then you total up right at the end, and maybe with the total, you come to the conclusion that it might not be a good idea, or it is a good idea to go that route. So very useful to actually use an example in this instance, and as I say, you can use it in your personal decision making as well. All right.
Thank you for that, Mr. Edwards. So now our next section will focus on advantages of working with others, with other people to solve problems. And in this case, there are different perspectives to be considered because we are dealing with maybe a diverse group of individuals with different backgrounds, different thinking patterns. Some are more, let's say, routine thinking orientated, and some are more creative. So it's important to know that when you are working with others to solve problems, there is a chance that people will think differently, and they will be a different in mindset and so forth. So there are different perspectives to be considered, because it could be difficult to be creative and innovative on your own. Then also, as a result of working with other people, you would have access to a broader base of skills, different skill sets, knowledge and experiences, which will help if you can get the opinion of others on a matter. And I always say that it's important to get things from a different perspective, different angles, as we view things differently, and it's important to know that we can basically benefit from the ideas that other people can also share, and it can help you to change your thinking and mindset, and also solve the problems that the business might need to solve. As a result of also working together, more ideas can be triggered from other employees' ideas, which can help the problem solving process. And we know the problem solving process is also made up of the cycle, where we have to identify problems, we define those problems, we identify what we call an action plan, come up with a strategy, we implement the strategy, we formulate the strategy first, then we implement it, and then we also evaluate and see how this particular process has worked. Then it also facilitates learning from one another, and I always say that it's important as possibly colleagues or people working in a group that we learn from each other, and we try to tap into each other's strengths as well. So it facilitates learning from one another when colleagues are able to teach or to explain things to one another, especially when they are able to work in groups. And then working together is encouraged to produce greater results, higher productivity, which in essence can help the business to achieve its objectives. and the workload decreases because everyone shares the problem and the experience, and there is now what we call a realistic share of workload, and everyone is able to assist to bring about the solving of the problems and also bring about greater experiences for everyone. I'll now give over to Mr. Edwards for our consolidation questions.
All right, grade 11s, in your modules that you should have in front of you, you will see that there are a number of consolidation questions. So these are questions that you can expect in your coming exams. Right, so it's very important that you go through these and you identify the specific action verbs, which we will go through, which informs you as to how to answer the question. So let's look at the first one that will be in front of you there. Right, so the first one looks at the definition. So define is the action verb. Define the meaning of creative thinking. So you will recall that we did go through that a little bit earlier. So we're going to go through to that slide where you look at the definition of creative thinking. Now bear in mind that we had two possible answers there. Creative thinking is when people are able to think of new and original approaches and ideas to find solutions to challenges. So that would be allocated 2 marks. You can also use the definition on the right-hand side. Creative thinking is being resourceful by applying artistic and clever ideas to create something original or new. All right, so you can expect a question like that coming up in November. Right, the second one, outline the differences between creative thinking and routine thinking. So if you recall, we looked at this section of work and we said this could be asked in the form of distinguish. Here we've looked at the action verb outline, and it also says outline the differences. So we're looking at the definition of creative thinking and then providing the definition of routine thinking. And let's have a look at that explanation there. Routine thinking is associated with the left brain function. Okay, that will give you the 1 mark, where the focus is on logical thought and methodical way of doing things. So that will give you the 2nd mark. Right, so that would be routine thinking. And if you are looking for the 3rd and 4th mark, you would need to provide creative thinking is associated with the right brain function. That's your 1 mark. That's your statement. And then your qualifier is where new ideas are generated. So keep that in mind. If you're looking for distinguish or outline the differences, then you would have 2 marks for routine thinking and then the associated 2 marks for creative thinking. All right. Then looking at the next one, it says, read the scenario below and answer the questions that follow. This is the type of question that you can often expect where there's a scenario provided. The employees of Lewis Designs want to use creative thinking when designing their products. LD, Lewis Designs ensures that there is a high morale among their employees. They also encourage their staff to solve complex problems. You should start identifying some very pertinent points or very important points in the scenario. And then it says, management does not know how to create an environment that would stimulate creative thinking. Right, so 1.3.1 asks, quote, there's your action verb, quote 2 advantages of creative thinking in the workplace from the scenario above. Right, so what I would always suggest is when you've got these scenarios in front of you, get your highlighter out. And as you are reading the scenario, highlight some of the aspects that you consider important. That's what we're going to do now. We have identified there is a high morale among their employees as 1 advantage. Okay, and then the second, they also encourage their staff to solve complex problems. So solving complex problems being the advantage there. Important here, guys, is to remember when we are quoting, okay, it needs to be verbatim. It doesn't have to be in quotation marks, but it is encouraged to recall that it is verbatim as it is in the scenario. Okay, very important that if you have not provided the quote as it is in the text, you will not get the marks allocated for that question. All right, so that is 2 marks. So you get 1 mark for the first quote and then 1 mark for the second quote. Right, the 1.3.2 looks at explaining the other advantages of creative thinking. So there's 2 that we've identified. Now you need to look at the other 2. And just as a reminder there, explain, discuss, describe requires the statement where you get 1 mark and then the qualifier to get your second mark. So let's look at some of the possible answers that you could provide. Okay, creative thinking will lead to improved participation of staff members. That's your statement where you'll get the 1 mark, which will ensure the generation of new ideas. That is your qualifier, which will give you your second mark. So after your statement, you ask the questions what, who, which, why. That will enable you to get your qualifier mark. All right, so let's have a look at the second possible answer there. The business will have a competitive advantage over other businesses. That's your 1 mark, your statement. Then you ask the question, possibly why? And then because of the unique strategies that are introduced, that gives you your second mark. So if we are looking at the question that they've asked, okay, it's allocated 6 marks. So 2 things that you look at. You look at the action verb, which is explain. All right, then you also look at the mark allocation, which therefore tells you how many points or how many bullets you are required to provide. Now, please remember also your examiner, the person marking your paper, will expect answers to be provided in bullet point form. So for this, you would expect to provide 3 possible bullets there. Okay, so going back to the answers there, you would need to provide 1, 2, and 3 if you are choosing those top 3 options. Okay, and it would need to have statement and then the qualifier. All right, looking at the last one, 1.3.3, right, there's recommend. Recommend is a higher order type question and is often interchangeable with suggest. So if you see recommend or suggest, then you can expect 2 marks at the end of your bullet. All right, so if you look at that question, the action verb is recommend, and then the mark allocation is 8. So you should realize at that point that we are expecting 4 bullets in order to get your full 8 marks. So let's look at the possible answers there. It says recommend ways in which businesses can create an environment that stimulates creative thinking in the workplace. So we look at this slide here where you have businesses must emphasize the importance of creative thinking to ensure that all staff know that their ideas will be heard. The second one, inspires staff to produce new ideas. So you would need 4 of these possible answers in order to get your 8 marks. So it is quite unusual to get questions where it is allocated 8 marks. That would be the maximum in your section B type questions. You might be required in your section C essay to provide further information, but in section B, maximum would be 8 marks allocated per question. All right. That brings us to the end of question 1. We will move on to question 2, which Mr. Pretorius will be taking you through.
Thank you, guys. So just before we go to question 2, I was thinking to myself, like when you look at question 1, it's important to note that the examiner has asked the question in different manners. There's different questioning techniques that were utilized here. So it's important when you are studying that you don't study creative thinking as only the meaning of it, but you also understand it as in there is advantages for creative thinking, there's benefits, advantage and benefits, the same basically concept, and there is also ways in which businesses can create an environment that stimulates creative thinking. So it's important when studying a content area to understand that there are different sections to that particular topic, and as a grade 11 you should be able to identify that. So going into grade 12 next year, you would already be prepared for the different ways as to how a question can be posed. And it's important, as Mr. Edwards has said to you, that you are mindful of the action verbs. Define, outline, give the difference, whether it says distinguish, whether it says explain or recommend or state something that you are mindful of. And important also to look at the mark allocations. The mark allocations basically dictates the depth and as well as the length of your responses. So for example, an 8-mark question would mean that you would have, as Mr. Edwards has said, 4 bullet points or 4 sentences with 2 facts per sentence, a statement plus a qualifier.
All right. Just to add to that, there's a reason why many people, many learners will use mind mapping when they are studying business studies, because you are creating those associations. So you would have creative thinking in the middle, and then you would have the definition, you would have application, then you would have problem solving techniques, and so on and so forth. So you see the whole when looking at this section of work or any section of work in business studies. So if you are not using mind mapping when studying, it might be an option when going forward into grade 12. All right, so moving on to question 2.
Okay, so question 2 says, read the scenario below and answer the questions that follow. So the scenario is about Mpo carpets, and in this case it says Mpo Carpets wants to improve the quality of their carpets. They requested a panel of experts to analyze the situation and to provide solutions. So the question that is posed, name the problem-solving technique which is used by Mpo Carpets. So I just want to quickly go back to what I've mentioned right in the beginning. There are a variety of problem-solving techniques. So as a grade 11 learner, for example, just to summarize quickly, we have brainstorming, and brainstorming is done by a group of individuals. Then we have mind mapping, and mind mapping, as Mr. Edwards has mentioned, is done by an individual. Then we also have the force field analysis, which is where we are comparing the advantages and the disadvantages for a particular change. And then, as in this scenario, you have to always be mindful of the keywords. As Mr. Edwards has mentioned, you have to have a highlighter to highlight the keywords within the scenario so that you are able to get the mark allocations that are given for a particular question. So in this particular question, I'll just highlight the fact that it says they requested a panel of experts. So when the word expert comes in a scenario, you automatically know that it refers to the Delphi technique. So in this case, the answer would be Delphi technique. And then question 2.1.2, advise businesses on how to apply the problem-solving technique identified in question 2.1.1 above. So in this case, the Delphi technique, as we have already discussed early in our session, is that there is a panel of experts that is invited. They are exposed to a first round 1 set of questionnaires or a questionnaire, and then their responses are then collated and it's analyzed, and a feedback report is then drawn up based on that. In a second set of questionnaires is then issued. As I have already mentioned, they might change their mindset, they might change their viewpoints on something based on the feedback report, and now they will have another opportunity to fill in a second questionnaire. The second questionnaire's responses will then again be compiled into a feedback report, and based on that, the feedback report will then be sent to the panel again, and there will be a consensus or agreement then reached based on the responses, the final responses of the panel of experts. So in that particular question, the emphasis is on the application of the Delphi technique. I also want to make mention that examiners can also ask you to identify the impact. What is the impact of the Delphi technique on businesses? So in this case, you'll then have to give the positives as well as the negatives to a particular the answer, and in this case it asked you for 6 marks, so you would have to give 3 bullets with 2 facts per bullet in order to get the full mark allocation of 6 marks.
Just to emphasize the importance of the understanding of these different techniques, if you did not get the Delphi technique there, and you may have put the force field technique and then you have described the application of that force field technique, you are going to lose out on the possible 8 marks for those 2 questions. So it's critical that you understand these different techniques and you're able to identify them out of a scenario. All right, so we're going to move on to a possible example of an essay that you could get in section C. So let's have a look there. It says, read the preamble below and answer the essay question that follows. So this is in front of you, so you can follow as I'm going along. Many businesses need to use creative thinking and problem-solving techniques such as the force field analysis to respond to complaints from their customers. Some solutions require the use of routine thinking. So routine thinking is relevant at times. Sometimes new and innovative solutions are required. Now you'll see the required 4 bullets or 4 questions that will be required. So those would be your subheadings. So it says write an essay on creative thinking in which you include the following aspects. Elaborate on the meaning of problem solving. Differentiate between routine thinking and creative thinking. Explain the benefits of creative thinking in the workplace. And then suggest ways in which businesses can apply the force field analysis. So you can see the different types of action verbs in front of you there. Elaborate, differentiate, explain, and suggest. So by now you should identify or realize the type of answer that we're requiring from you. So let's have a look at the possible layout of an essay. So first and foremost, you'll have the heading of the question. Now bear in mind that these are very important because there are marks allocated to things like the layout, things like the synthesis or the structure, also originality marks. So let's have a look at the layout. There's got to be an introduction, and the introduction, sometimes there's often some confusion as to what is required in introduction. Write 2 facts on the subject that is not asked in the question, is not out of the scenario. You will not get 2 marks if you are just taking information out of the scenario. Focus on what or why based on the topic and the scenario. Do not answer any of the questions. So those 4 bullets, do not answer any of those bullets in your introduction. Okay, you will not be allocated those marks. So you're asking the question what or why based on the topic. Then I often ask the learners to include the body or the heading body, just so that they get the structure. The emphasis in the layout is on having the words introduction and conclusion, but then the body is not necessarily always required. But I do encourage that, because under the body then you have your subheadings. Some of the learners that I have will just repeat as their subheading, repeat the question that has been provided. But you can, in this instance for example, you can have the meaning of problem solving as your first subheading, and then routine thinking and creative thinking as your second subheading. All right, so that's important to remember, the structure of your paper. Then just going on to your conclusion, what is required, or what will constitute 2 marks in your conclusion. Close off by coming to a conclusion. Unless it is asked in your question, then it should be included under one of your subheadings. Remember, you don't want to include anything that is part of your answer in the subheadings. Okay, focus on the result. If you follow the correct procedure from your essay, what will be the result for your business? So will your business be more productive? Will it be more efficient? Will it be more profitable? Those are the sorts of things that we will be looking for in your conclusion. Now, hopefully your teacher has taken you through how we as markers, examiners, will mark your paper. We will look at FLASO. Okay, the F is for facts. That's 32 facts, which includes 2 marks for introduction, 2 marks for conclusion, and then a possible 28 marks for your body. All right, then you'll look at layout, and that's where the introduction and conclusion comes in. Then we look at analysis, okay, whereby have you included all the possible headings? Right, and have you actually completed more than half of the work? Synthesis, or often referred to as structure, all the facts are relevant. Okay, have you provided the relevant facts in your essay? Okay, and then lastly is originality. Okay, originality is 2 examples, and they are quite strict at the end of grade 12 now with regards to providing marks for the originality. It needs to be something that is part of current affairs, up to date and relevant to a particular section in your essay. So always suggested before your exam, maybe go and have a look at the newspaper, go and have a look online to see if there is anything that would be relevant to, say, creative thinking. Has a particular business come up with a creative way of doing things? Okay, you might consider during COVID, some businesses came up with delivery services. Check is 60/60. Right, those are probably out of date examples, but there are examples out there of businesses being creative if we are looking at this particular section of work. All right, so that's the essay layout, and hopefully you have already been implementing that when answering an essay in section C. Let's look at the memorandum for this question. Right, first and foremost, the introduction. As I said earlier, this needs to be looking at what or why, and please do not include any of your answers to the questions here. Possible examples, if we go back to the question here, it said elaborate, the question was all about creative thinking. So let's look at the possible answers. Is the responsibility of all employees to endeavor to find solutions to any challenges that may occur in the business? Now remember, we are requiring 2 points here. The second point, possible point, is this can be done by thinking creatively. As you can see there, any other relevant answer, okay, that is obviously up to the marker as to whether it is relevant. All right, so it needs to be something that is providing solid points and a good introduction to your essay. All right, then we look at the meaning of problem solving. As you can see, the subheading provided there, meaning of problem solving. That's a type of subheading that we'd be expecting. Now, there are a number of different relevant answers here. I always encourage, if you're not too sure about an answer, maybe you possibly haven't gone through that section of work, do not leave it blank, because if you have given the essence of what we're looking for as an examiner, it is possible that we will give you the allocated marks. Right, so if you look at the meaning of problem solving, it's a process of studying a situation to find strategies to bring about change. It involves collecting facts that include problem findings and problems shaping. As you can see there, the maximum amount of marks that we can provide in this section is 8. So please bear that in mind. If it says define problem solving, it's not necessarily just for 2 marks. In an essay type question, it may be upwards of 8 marks or more. So rather give too much information than too little information in your essay. All right. Moving on to the second subheading, said differentiate between routine thinking and creative thinking. So here you can see for this bullet, maximum 12 marks. Again, rather give too much information than too little. For creative thinking, the maximum amount of marks that we can give there is 6, and then routine thinking, a sub-max of 6 marks there. All right, as we've mentioned before, creative thinking, this is the right brain function whereby new ideas are generated, whereas routine thinking is a left brain function, and as you can see there, where the marks are allocated. Right, benefits of creative thinking, maximum 14 marks there, and it was asked in the form of explain the benefits of creative thinking, so you've got the statement and qualifier there. As you can see, numerous possible answers available to you. Then we look at the application of the force field analysis. The question referred to advise, if I recall. Advise, suggest or recommend. Higher order questions, 2 marks at the end of the bullet. Maximum 12 possible marks there. Then you've got your conclusion, where you've got 1 bullet with, for example, businesses create a good image when all employees work together to solve problems. So that is a result of, if you put in place creative thinking, okay, that is a result. So going back to what is required for a conclusion. Right, lastly, just to give you details of the breakdown there, the introduction, then you've got your 4 possible subheadings there with the conclusion and the maximum allocated marks. So you can see there, the maximum that we can give is 32, but more than enough marks are available to you if you're looking at the different subheadings. All right, that also refers to the FLASO at the bottom there as well, looking at the 2 marks allocated for layout and so on. Right, ladies and gents, that brings us to the end of this section, and obviously I would like to thank Mr. Pretorius for joining us today, and yeah, grade 11s, wishing you all the very best for the coming exams. Make sure that you study hard and you go through all the different pointers that we have provided you today. All the very best.